All right, so this is a quick promo here announcing the beginnings of my second course for the John David Ebert School for the Study of Culture, Cosmology, and the Arts. This second course will be called Understanding Mythology, a Hymn to the Muses, and it is available for enrollment right now. I have published the course on Teachable, so you can sign up for it right now, and it begins on July 16th, Saturday at noon, Mountain Standard Time, and we'll meet every Saturday after that at noon from noon to 2 Mountain Standard Time for 10 weeks. So this is going to be an epic course. So that's July 16th through September 17th. And don't worry if you miss one of those classes. I always record the discussions. There's a pre-recorded lecture that you will find on the site. And then that week we meet as a group and we discuss the ideas. If you miss it, it's okay because it'll be recorded, and so you can see the class. I know 10 weeks is a big commitment, and I haven't changed the price any. The price remains $500 to sign up for this, even though this is a 10-week course, whereas the class that we're just finishing right now, Transformations of Consciousness Through Time, was an 8-week course for $500. So you're getting like 2 bonus classes, and so yeah, that's it. So let's take a look at the lineup here. So Understanding Mythology, a Hymn to the Muses, and I've used here a Zdzislaw Beksiński painting, which I think is perfect, with these little individual tribes gathered around campfires trying to understand their mythologies and why it is that they're all isolated from each other. There's a kind of disintegration, balkanization process that I think this reflects perfectly that's going on in our society. And myth has the function, it has a synthetic function, it pulls people together, whereas we're suffering from a crisis right now of isolation and social disintegration. So it's a very important time right now to understand mythology. Mythology is part of the quest for meaning, and I think millennials in particular right now are on a quest for meaning. They're on a quest for identity. And mythology will help guide them toward that. So the thinkers that we're going to look at. So here's the curriculum. It's 10 weeks, and I've assigned in a playful manner one of the 9 muses to each of these with Apollo. Traditionally, the idea was that, like in the Pythagorean Tetractys, you have the dot in the center is Apollo, the sun god, around which the other 9 dots are the muses that sing in a round dance going around him. So it's actually 9 muses plus Apollo. And Herodotus, the father of history, if you open his book and you look at the table of contents there, he too has organized all of his chapters, 9 of them, in accordance with the 9 muses. So I thought it would be fun to assign muses. So Clio is the muse of history. So the introduction on the function of mythology, I go back through history and I discuss how myth functions throughout history to build civilization. So we look at different aspects of civilization, such as ancient Sumer. We look at Göbekli Tepe. We look at the ancient Paleolithic site of Dolní Věstonice and so forth, and look and see how myth structures cosmologies and confers meaning on these societies that has an integrative function that pulls people together. Ereto, which comes, of course, from Eros, which is perfect for our discussion of the Freud-Jung conflict, because the two of them were debating the nature of libido. Freud just wanted it to have a sexual connotation, whereas for Jung, libido was much larger than that and meant psychic energy generally, whether it was erotic energy or aggressive energy or what have you. Then 2 courses on Jung. So then we have Calliope, who is the main muse of all the 9, and she is the muse of epic poetry. Her child is Orpheus. For our second discussion of Jung, namely the archetypes of the collective unconscious. So we need to have Jung's theory in place of the archetypes and how he arrived at the idea of the collective unconscious. So it's kind of a biographical discussion of how he mapped this out. And then Terpsichore, the muse of dance. Joseph Campbell's wife was a dancer. And so we'll look at the first 2 videos for Joseph Campbell as well. First, the hero's journey, where we'll look at the hero with 1,000 faces and the monomyth, the dance of myth, and its influence on our culture, which has been on popular culture, in particular American popular culture, has been tremendous with the Star Wars films and Mad Max and so forth. Euterpe is the muse of music for Campbell Part 2, the Masks of God, where we look at the differences between the myths, whereas the hero's journey boils all myth down to a monomyth, a single monomyth. With the Masks of God, Campbell became aware of the necessity for taking the civilizational semiotics into account of each one of these civilizations. Euterpe, the muse of music. So for William Irwin Thompson, we have Urania, because William Irwin Thompson was very much interested in the astronomical structures hidden in myths. He read Herta von Dachshund, and I have not included Herta von Dachshund because she's a bit too difficult to read for, I think, the beginner of myth studies. And this course is really designed for the beginner, as an introduction to myth studies to get you going. We will look at Thompson's analysis of the story of Rapunzel, where he finds astronomical motifs, namely the 8-year Venus cycle, hidden in that story. And then we'll look at his historical model in general. And since Thompson was my mentor for 15 years, we will look at one of my books. Melpomene is the muse of tragedy. We will look at my book, Rage in the Word, on Gilgamesh, Akhenaten, and Moses, all three of whom come to a tragic end. Gilgamesh fails in his quest to defeat death. Akhenaten's experiment to build the world's first utopian colony for 13 years came to an end with a plague that just wiped everyone out. And Moses, too, his fate was not to be allowed to enter the promised land, just to glimpse it. So we'll look at my book. And then after that, we will look at Maria Gimbutas. Polyhymnia is the muse of agriculture. And with Maria Gimbutas and the civilization of the goddess, we will look at her whole idea where she was an archaeologist, and she gave a concrete foundation to J.J. Bakofen's idea in the 1860s when he wrote his book on Mother Right. He was the first to suspect that behind the world's patriarchal traditions lay a matriarchal tradition, and she provides actual concrete archaeological data for that. And then we will look at Mary Sedegast, Talia, the silent muse. Mary Sedegast, and who is very little known, who was a close personal friend of William Irwin Thompson, and I knew her as well. In her two books, Plato Prehistorian, which is her theory of what she thinks happened with Atlantis. It's a surprising theory. It's not goofy or New Agey at all. And her book on Zarathustra. And her primary area of expertise was in archaeology. She wasn't an archaeologist, but she did study with James Mellart. She was absolutely obsessed with Çatalhöyük. And she has a completely different reading of the same Neolithic world that Maria Gimbutas has. So I want her in here, even though she's very obscure. She died recently. A very elegant woman. I had lunch with her once, and we discussed her two books, and they're just damn good books. And then finally, surprisingly, with Apollo, J.P. Mallory, In Search of the Indo-Europeans. Surprisingly, I recently learned that he was a pupil of Maria Gimbutas out at UCLA, which I did not know. Mallory was a very aggressive guy. He was a policeman at one point, and I think he was in the Army before he got his degree in the study of Indo-European research. And his book called In Search of the Indo-Europeans goes through and analyzes their whole world in detail in a way that Gimbutas does not. Gimbutas simply devotes like the last chapter of her great book, The Civilization of the Goddess, to the Indo-Europeans. Clearly she favors the farmer world of the goddesses, and her pupil Mallory is a kind of upstart. Is much more fascinated with the Indo-Europeans, who then came down and conquered them, and we get the fusion, and from out of that fusion we get the world of Greek myth, as well as Indian myth. So it'll be fascinating to go through all of these thinkers, 10 courses, and as I say, it begins July 16th. The cost of the class is $500, which I think is pretty standard going rate for 8-week classes, but this is a 10-week class. I haven't changed the price. I charged $500 for the course that we are just now finishing the last 3 classes of, Transformations of Consciousness Through Time. And we've had a good group of about 20 students, and we've had a fantastic time. I don't think one person has a complaint, but we have just had a blast. We're on our last 3 classes, and then there will be a 2-week break for me to reorient myself, and then we'll start this 10-week course that I think you're going to enjoy very, very much. So, all right, that's it. Understanding Mythology, A Hymn to the Muses, taught by John David Ebert for the John David Ebert School for the Study of Culture, Cosmology, and the Arts. Keep in mind, I do also do astrology readings, private astrology readings. They're not free, but for those who are interested in them, hit me up at my email, johndavidebert@gmail.com. Also hit me up there if you have any questions about the course at all. And that's it. Thank you.